I'm 34, and I learned what my husband really wanted from a hospital bed. 6 weeks earlier, I'd given birth to our daughter. Then a truck ran a red light, and I woke up with broken ribs, a punctured lung, and a cast on my arm. My husband wasn't on his way home. He was already choosing his mistress over the newborn he'd promised to protect. So from that bed, with my left hand, I made one call and started the clock. But let me start from the beginning. I'm glad you're here for this one. Before the story continues, leave a quick comment and tell me, have you ever signed something important without reading the fine print? Yes or no? Some details here are fictionalized to highlight the lesson. But the message at the heart of this story is what I hope stays with you. I woke to white light and a voice saying my name like she'd said it 3 times already. Ms. Mercer? Briar, can you hear me? The ceiling was acoustic tile. Fluorescent panels. I tried to move my right arm and fire shot through my shoulder. Metal. A cast. My ribs felt like broken glass grinding with each breath. You're at University of Mississippi Medical Center, Emergency Department. You were in a car accident. A truck ran a red light at the intersection of State Street and Pascagoula. Nurse Rodriguez stood beside me, mid-40s, with the efficient gentleness of someone who'd seen too many families fracture in these fluorescent bays. Her badge said 22 years in emergency medicine. She was checking my pupils with a penlight. What time is it? My voice came out hoarse. 11:47. You've been here about 90 minutes. 90 minutes. The last thing I remembered was leaving the office, Jameson's daycare bag in the passenger seat because I'd promised to pick him up early for once. 5 months old, and I'd already broken more promises than I'd kept. Your injuries, Nurse Rodriguez said, checking her tablet. 3 fractured ribs on your right side, small pneumothorax. We've got you on oxygen. Right radius fracture. Orthopedics already casted it. Concussion, mild. You were lucky. Lucky. My son. The words came out flat. Jameson. He's 5 months old. Who has him? Your husband is here. He said the baby is with your mother. My mother. Ivy. Of course she'd been the emergency contact at daycare, because I was always at the office, and Corbin was always somewhere that wasn't home. The relief was immediate and nauseating. Jameson was safe. My mother had him. Ms. Mercer, I need to ask some questions for our records. You're 34, is that correct? And you work as CFO, Chief Financial Officer. I'm equity partner at Mercer Solutions. She typed this into her tablet. I watched her fingers move across the screen and thought about the board meeting I'd missed tomorrow. The Series B financing presentation Derek Kolb was waiting on. The audit Celeste had flagged that needed my signature. What kind of person measures their worth by how little help they need? The kind who built a company from nothing. The kind who went back to work 3 weeks after giving birth because the alternative was watching someone else make decisions about the future she'd designed. The kind who was lying in an ER bay calculating which emails could wait and which couldn't. Your husband is just outside, Nurse Rodriguez said. I'll let him know you're awake. Corbin, 36, CEO. My husband of 8 years. Though lately those words felt like job titles more than promises. I tried to remember the last time we'd had a conversation that wasn't about the company. The financing round, the investors, the growth projections. I heard his voice before I saw him. The curtain, in the hallway, on the phone. No, she's still unconscious. They said it could be another hour. A pause. I know. I'm sorry. I just need to make sure she's stable, and then I'll... Another pause. Longer. She's used to handling things alone. She won't even notice I'm gone. That sentence. 7 words. That's all it took. A woman's voice murmured something in the background. Close enough that she was standing right beside him. The words were indistinct, but the tone wasn't. Intimate. Careful. I'll meet you at the car in 5 minutes, Corbin said. Footsteps. Receding. I stared at the acoustic ceiling tiles and counted the perforations in the panel above my head. 216 holes, each one perfectly round, perfectly uniform. Someone had engineered those holes for optimal sound dampening. Nurse Rodriguez came back through the curtain. Is someone coming to stay with you tonight? We're moving you to a room upstairs for observation, but you shouldn't be alone for the next 24 hours. It's handled, I said. She looked at me for a moment too long. The way medical professionals look at you when they know something is wrong beyond the injuries they can catalog on a chart. I heard Corbin's footsteps in the hallway again. Closer this time. Then the hydraulic hiss of the ER doors opening, his footsteps fading. Gone. He was leaving. Walking out of the hospital while I was being admitted for observation with 3 broken ribs and a punctured lung. Meeting her at the car. I didn't cry. I didn't call out. I didn't ask Nurse Rodriguez to stop him. People think strength is not breaking. They're wrong. Strength is what you do in the 3 seconds after you break. I reached for my phone on the bedside tray with my left hand. The screen was cracked but functional. 11:52 p.m. I had 47 missed calls. 12 from my mother. 18 from Corbin. The rest from people who'd heard about the accident through whatever mysterious network transmitted bad news faster than good. I scrolled past all of them. Past Corbin's name. Past my mother's. Past the executive team group chat that was probably exploding with concerned messages. I found the name I'd saved 8 years ago and called exactly twice. Once when we bought the house. Once when we closed the Series A financing, and the lawyer said we needed to update our prenuptial agreement to account for equity dilution. Harriet Finch. Family law. My thumb hovered over the name. Nurse Rodriguez was adjusting my IV. Her back to me, giving me the privacy she probably thought I needed to call my husband back. Is anyone coming? She asked quietly. Corbin's footsteps had faded to nothing. I tapped the name. The phone rang once. Twice. On the 3rd ring, a voice answered. This is Harriet. This is Harriet. Harriet Finch, 58. The family law attorney who drafted my prenuptial agreement 8 years ago and updated it twice since. Her voice was sharp and awake despite the midnight hour. It's Briar Mercer, I said. I'm in the emergency room at University of Mississippi Medical Center. I need you to file divorce papers first thing tomorrow morning. Silence. Not confusion. Calculation. Briar, are you hurt? What happened? Car accident. Truck ran a red light. 3 fractured ribs, punctured lung, concussion. I'm being admitted for observation. I kept my voice clinical. I overheard my husband on a phone call in the hallway 20 minutes ago. He was talking to a woman. He said I'm used to handling things alone and I won't notice he's gone. Then he left the hospital to meet her at the car. Another pause. Shorter. Tell me exactly what you heard him say, word for word. I recited it. The entire exchange. The woman's voice in the background, the timeline. The fact that he'd told staff I was still unconscious when I'd been awake for 15 minutes. The doors closing as he walked out. And you want to file tomorrow morning, Harriet said, not a question. Yes. Have you confronted him? No. Do you want to? No. How many life-altering decisions are made from hospital beds at midnight? All right, Harriet said. I'll have the paperwork ready by 9 a.m. But Briar, before I file anything, we need to talk about the prenuptial agreement we updated during your Series A funding round. I closed my eyes. Tried to remember. 2 years ago. May. We'd been drowning in legal paperwork, corporate bylaws, investor agreements, stock option plans. Harriet had insisted we update the prenup to account for equity dilution. I remember protecting the company structure, I said. Making sure investors couldn't claim marital property rights to my shares. The rest was standard. You wrote a very specific infidelity clause, Harriet said. You were quite insistent about it. I didn't remember that. I remembered arguing about vesting schedules, about whether Corbin's sweat equity from the early years entitled him to equal ownership, even though I'd put in the initial capital. What does the clause say? We'll go over it tomorrow. But if I file these papers tomorrow, and if that clause is triggered, the consequences are immediate, for both of you, for the company. My right hand was throbbing. The cast felt tight. I could see Nurse Rodriguez through the curtain gap, updating charts. Before anything else, I said, my son needs someone tonight. Jameson. He's 5 months old. He's with my mother. But she's 68 and she can't stay overnight on short notice. I need a licensed professional. I heard typing. Fast. There's a licensed overnight care agency. Harriet said. I'm texting you the number now. They staff pediatric nurses. I've used them for clients before. My phone buzzed. I switched to speaker, pulled up the text, called the number with my left thumb. A woman answered on the first ring. I gave her my mother's address. Jameson's age, my credit card number from memory. She said a nurse named Nina Warren would arrive in 40 minutes with references I could verify on their website. I'd built a trap for myself and forgotten I'd armed it. I switched back to Harriet. Done, I said. Nurse arrives in 40 minutes. Now tell me what that clause does. Not over the phone, Harriet said. Not while you're concussed and on pain medication. What I will tell you is that when you wrote it, you were very clear. You said if Corbin ever betrayed the partnership, you wanted to make sure he couldn't use the company's success as leverage. You wanted consequences that were financial, not just emotional. I stared at the IV line in my left arm, watched the saline drip. Even in crisis, I was solving problems in order: baby first, business second, broken marriage last. The Series B, I said. We're closing the Series B financing round in 10 days. $8 million valuation. Is that what you mean by timing? Harriet's voice went careful, the way it always did when she was about to tell a client something they'd forgotten they knew. The clause is triggered by documented proof of infidelity, she said. But the financial consequences are tied to the company's valuation at the time of filing. You wrote it that way deliberately. You said if he was going to cheat, you wanted to make sure he did it before the company was worth anything, not after. My heart rate monitor beeped faster. Nurse Rodriguez glanced over. So if you file now, I said slowly, before the Series B closes, there's one clause in that prenup you should remember before Corbin reads it. Harriet interrupted. The one tied to your company's valuation timing. We'll discuss it tomorrow when you're clear-headed. But Briar, what you wrote 2 years ago was designed to protect you. It's going to do exactly that. The question is whether you're ready for what that protection looks like. The line went quiet, except for my breathing and the monitor counting my pulse. I'll see you at 9 a.m., I said. Get some rest, Harriet said. And Briar, don't sign anything Corbin brings you. Not even a get-well card. Understood? Understood. She hung up. I set the phone down on the bedside tray and stared at the ceiling tiles. 216 holes. Perfectly engineered for optimal sound dampening. I'd engineered something too, apparently. 2 years ago. Something I'd forgotten I'd built. And tomorrow morning, Corbin was going to find out exactly what I'd designed. The hospital woke at 6 with shift change and breakfast carts, and I hadn't slept at all. I'd spent the hours after Harriet hung up staring at the ceiling, cataloging what I knew. Corbin had left the ER to meet a woman. There was an infidelity clause in a prenup I'd written but didn't remember. The Series B financing would close in 10 days at an $8 million valuation. Timing mattered. Protection mattered. I'd engineered something 2 years ago that was about to protect me now. My phone buzzed at 6:47. FaceTime. Nina Warren. Nina Warren was the overnight care nurse from the agency. 50-something with the calm competence of someone who'd soothed 1,000 anxious mothers. Her face filled the screen, backlit by early morning sunlight through what I recognized as my own kitchen window. "Good morning," she said quietly. "I wanted to check in before my shift ends. Jameson had a perfect night." She turned the phone. There he was, 5 months old, sleeping in the portable bassinet we kept downstairs. Tiny fist pressed against his cheek. My chest tightened. The fractured ribs made it hard to breathe. But this was different. This was the specific pain of being 20 miles away from the only person who mattered. "He took 4 ounces at 3 a.m., Nina said. "Back down by 3:20. Perfect little sleeper. Your mother's been wonderful. She just went upstairs to shower." My mother, Ivy Mercer, 68, widowed for 6 years. The person I called when emergencies happened because Corbin was always somewhere that wasn't home. "Thank you," I said. My voice came out hoarse. "I can't tell you what it means that he's safe." "Of course," Nina smiled. "Will your husband be coming to relieve me this morning? Or should I stay through the day shift?" There it was. The question I'd have to answer eventually to everyone. "He won't be coming," I said. "Can you stay until my mother is ready to take over? I'll pay the extended rate." Nina's expression didn't change. Professional discretion. "Absolutely. I'm happy to stay as long as you need." There's a specific kind of loneliness that comes from watching your child sleep through a screen while your body breaks in a hospital bed 20 miles away. After we hung up, I opened my work email. 63 unread messages. Most from yesterday afternoon, after word spread about the accident. Concern notes from the executive team, the board, investors asking if I needed anything. One from Corbin. Timestamped 11:32 p.m. Subject line, "I'm sorry." I deleted it without opening it. At 8:15, a text came through from a number I recognized. Celeste Marsh. Celeste was 42. Our internal finance manager for 3 years. She had the careful politeness of someone who'd learned not to question the bosses. She'd been hired specifically because she was detail-oriented and quiet. The kind of person who found discrepancies but waited to be asked before pointing them out. Her text read, "Hi, Briar. I hope you're recovering. When you're feeling better, there's an expense I need you to review. No rush." I typed back immediately. "I'm available now. What expense?" 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. "Oh, I didn't expect..." "It's a recurring wire. I wasn't sure if you'd authorized it personally." "Send me the details." Another pause. Longer this time. "It's to an LLC I can't find in our approved vendor list. SL Consulting Services. I noticed it a while ago, but kept thinking it must be something you or Corbin set up. But with the audit coming up for the Series B, I wanted to make sure all our recurring expenses are documented properly." My heart monitor beeped faster. The nurse who'd come in to check my vitals glanced at the screen, then at me. "I'm fine," I said. "Just reading something." She nodded and left. I typed, "SL Consulting. I've never heard of them. How long has this been running? Why do we answer work emails from hospital beds, as if proving we're still useful might make us less disposable?" The response came faster this time. "That's the thing. 14 months. Monthly wires. Not enormous amounts, but consistent. I kept thinking you or Corbin must have authorized it. But I can't find the contract or any invoices. Just the recurring payment authorization in the system. What's the amount? Varies. Between 47 and 85,000 per month. I did the math. 14 months. Average 60,000. That was over $800,000, nearly $1 million. To a vendor I'd never heard of. Send me everything, I typed. Account details, payment history, authorization records. Sending now. My phone vibrated. Email attachment. I opened it. 14 months. The words sat on my screen like an indictment. The spreadsheet loaded slowly on the hospital Wi-Fi. Each row was a wire transfer. Each one filed under strategic advisory fees. Each one approved in the system with Corbin's authorization code. May 2023. First payment, $47,000. June 2023. $68,000. July through December. Amounts climbing gradually. January 2024. $85,000. February through July. Consistent at that higher amount. 14 months meant this started a full year before I'd overheard that phone call in the ER. A full year before Corbin walked out of the hospital to meet her at the car. This wasn't a recent affair. This was a long-term plan. I scrolled to the account details. SL Consulting Services, LLC. Registered address in Jackson. Registered agent name listed in the formation documents Celeste had pulled from the state database. The attachment loaded slowly. SL Consulting Services, LLC. 14 months of identical wire transfers, each one filed under strategic advisory fees. I didn't recognize the account. I didn't recognize the amounts, but I recognized the initials. SL. And when the registered agent name finally loaded on the screen, I recognized that too. Saskia Langley. Saskia Langley. Registered agent. I stared at the name on my phone screen. The hospital room was quiet except for the monitor counting my heartbeat. Saskia Langley. I knew that name. The Series A funding round. Over a year ago. Oreo had insisted we needed someone with institutional investor experience. He'd brought her into 3 board meetings as a strategic advisor. Professional. Polished. Mid-30s. She'd sat across from me at our conference table. Smiled when I made points about growth trajectory. Took notes on a leather portfolio. After the Series A closed, I never saw her again. Corbin said her contract was complete. That was May of last year. May 2023. The same month the first wire transfer went through to SL Consulting Services. I scrolled through Celeste's file. The full business registration loaded. SL Consulting Services, LLC. Business address at 2 Lakeland Plaza, one of the expensive downtown Jackson buildings, where consultants rented virtual offices to look legitimate. Saskia Langley wasn't just the woman on the phone. She was someone who'd been inside our company. Someone who'd seen our financials, our investor list, our growth projections. 14 months. She'd been bleeding our company for 14 months while I'd forgotten she existed. I opened the Excel attachment. 14 rows. 14 months. May 2023 through June 2024. First payment, $47,000. Strategic consulting. Second payment, $68,000. Market analysis. July through September, the amounts climbed. $52,000, $73,000, $61,000. October through December. Higher. $80,000. $79,000. $85,000. January 2024 through June. Consistent. $85,000 every month. I added it in my head. $900,000. $900,000 transferred to a shell company owned by a woman who'd spent 3 weeks in our office pretending to help us, then disappeared. Every single wire authorization showed the same approval signature. Corbin Mercer, CEO. Not one copied to me for review. Not one flagged for board approval, despite our bylaws requiring dual signature on contracts over $50,000. He'd signed every one alone. There's a specific kind of betrayal in discovering that every signature you didn't see was hiding a systematic theft. I switched apps. Mississippi Secretary of State Business Registry Search, typed in SL Consulting Services, LLC. The record loaded. Filed February 14, 2023. Valentine's Day. Incorporation date, February 14, 2023. We'd started Series A discussions in March 2023. Corbin had introduced Saskia in late March as someone from his professional network. She'd incorporated her shell company 1 month before she ever walked into our office. This wasn't passion. This wasn't an affair that spiraled into financial entanglement. This was a plan. She'd set up the infrastructure first, created the business entity, established the bank account. Then she'd let Corbin introduce her as a legitimate consultant, stot through our meetings, gain credibility. And the moment the Series A closed and we had cash in the bank, the payments started. I scrolled through the registry details. Single member LLC. Saskia Langley. 100% ownership. The registered agent address was 2 Lakeland Plaza, but the actual mail drop was a UPS store on County Line Road. Virtual mailbox service. No employees, no business licenses, no contracts on file. The company existed only to receive our money. Love was the cover story. Money was always the motive. My phone buzzed. Text from my mother. Nina left at noon. Jameson is napping. Are you feeling any better? I typed back. I'm fine. Thank you for being there. Another buzz. Celeste. Did you get a chance to look at the file? Should I flag this for Corbin to review? My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Don't flag it for Corbin. Don't mention it to anyone. Don't let him know I've seen this. But I couldn't say that. Not yet. I'm reviewing it now. I typed. Don't mention it to anyone until I've had a chance to trace the full history. I want to make sure we understand what we're looking at before we raise it formally. 3 dots, then. Understood. Let me know if you need anything else. I took a screenshot of the business registration. Then another of the incorporation date. Then the Excel sheet showing all 14 payments. Then the approval signatures. Then the business address showing the UPS store. I created a new folder in my phone's encrypted storage. Titled it Evidence. Saved every screenshot there. $900,000 over 14 months. A shell company incorporated before she ever met us. Wire transfers signed solely by Corbin, deliberately structured to stay under our dual approval threshold. Payment categories designed to look legitimate. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't an affair that got complicated. This was theft. Premeditated, systematic, ongoing. And the woman on the phone last night, the one Corbin left the hospital to meet, was the same woman who'd been stealing from our company since the day we got funded. I didn't call Corbin, didn't text Celeste back with questions, didn't do anything that might signal I understood what I was seeing. I just saved the evidence. Methodically, quietly. Because the $900,000 I could see was just the part that left a paper trail. And I had a feeling that what I couldn't see yet was going to be much worse. I spent the rest of that afternoon searching public records on my phone. Business licenses, property records, vehicle registrations. Looking for other traces of what they'd built together. I didn't find anything. Either they were better at hiding it, or the theft was exactly what it looked like, the shell account. Then Corbin walked into my hospital room the next afternoon, carrying grocery store roses and wearing the expression he uses for difficult clients. "Hey," he said, gentle, concerned. "How are you feeling?" I looked at him. 36. Dark hair going gray at the temples, navy blazer over white shirt. The outfit he wore to seem approachable but professional. He'd left me bleeding in an ER bay to meet his mistress, the woman he'd been paying with our company's money. Now he stood in my hospital room with $12 roses, asking how I felt. "Better," I said. "The pneumothorax is healing. They might discharge me tomorrow." "That's great." He set the flowers on the window ledge. Didn't come close enough to kiss me. Didn't reach for my hand. "I'm so sorry I couldn't stay that first night. Emergency with the Series B. Investor panic. You know how it is." "Of course," I said, understanding, supportive. "Work comes first during a funding round." He smiled, relieved. "Only 8 more days until closing. Then we breathe." 8 days. July 25th. The Series B closing date. He was counting down. Racing toward the same deadline I was just beginning to understand. There's a particular kind of acting required when you smile at someone you're planning to dismantle, knowing they think you're too injured to notice the knife. "How's Jameson?" he asked. "Fine. My mother has him. I would have picked him up myself, but the investor calls went past midnight. You know how Feldman gets when there's last-minute due diligence." Marcus Feldman, the lead Series B investor. Corbin was using real names, real details, building a plausible story. Maybe parts were even true. Maybe there had been investor calls. Maybe he'd just taken them from Saskia's apartment instead of our house. "I understand," I said. "You sure you're okay?" He was watching me now. Something shifted in his expression, calculating. "You seem different. 3 fractured ribs and a punctured lung will do that." He nodded, accepted it. "I should let you rest. I just wanted to make sure you had everything you needed." "I'm fine. Thank you for coming." He left. The roses stayed on the window ledge, already wilting. At 6 p.m., I video-called Harriet. Her face filled my phone screen. Still in her office. Late afternoon light behind her. "I found something," I said. "Our finance manager flagged a recurring expense. Shell company. 14 months of wire transfers totaling $900,000. The registered agent is Saskia Langley." Harriet reached for a pen. "Saskia Langley. Do you know who that is?" "The strategic advisor Corbin brought in during our Series A. She was in our office for 3 weeks. I thought she was legitimate." "And you have documentation, screenshots. Every wire transfer, every approval signature, all Corbin, never me. The company was incorporated 1 month before she ever walked into our office. I'd built a trap 2 years ago and walked away from it completely." "That's premeditation," Harriet said. "That strengthens everything. Briar. I need to explain exactly what that infidelity clause does." She pulled up a document on her screen. "Amended prenuptial agreement, dated May 2022. You wrote this during the Series A negotiations," Harriet said. "You were very specific about timing. Do you remember?" "I remember wanting to protect the business structure. Make sure if the marriage ended, the company wouldn't be part of the settlement." "You said something else." Harriet scrolled through the document. "You said if Corbin ever betrayed the partnership, you wanted to make sure he couldn't profit from the company's success. You wanted consequences tied to value, not sentiment." I didn't remember saying that. But it sounded like something I would have said. "The clause defines a major equity event," Harriet continued, "as any funding round, acquisition, or public offering that materially changes the company's valuation or ownership structure. The Series B closing on July 25th qualifies. So if I activate the clause before that date, if you activate it with documented proof of infidelity before the Series B closes, Corbin forfeits his entire equity stake. It transfers to you immediately. No buyout, no negotiation, no court proceedings. It's contractual forfeiture triggered by breach. He signed it. It's binding. Sometimes, the best revenge is the document you signed before you knew you'd need it. How much equity does he currently hold? I asked. According to corporate filings, 38%. You hold 51%. Outside investors hold 11%. And the Series B valuation, $8 million. Once it closes, the equity structure shifts. Everyone gets diluted. But if the forfeiture activates before closing, you absorb his 38% first. Then the dilution happens. I did the math. 89% ownership before the new investors came in, controlling interests so absolute that no one could touch me. Harriet's face was serious on the screen. Briar, this is irrevocable. Once I file the activation paperwork, there's no negotiation, no settlement. He loses everything on paper before he even knows it's happening. She paused. Are you certain you want to proceed? Once activated, there's no going back. Yes, I said. Harriet's face on the video screen didn't change expression, but I saw her shoulders settle. A decision made, a trigger pulled. Then we move forward, she said. I'll need documentation of the infidelity, the financial records you already have, and the exact Series B closing timeline. Can you get your finance manager on a secure call? I told Harriet yes the next morning, and by noon we had Celeste on a 3-way video call that would map the next 7 days of my life. Celeste's face appeared in the third square on my phone screen. She was in her office at the company, door closed behind her. I could see the framed photo of her daughter on the desk behind her shoulder. Thank you for joining us, Harriet said. Her attorney voice, calm, authoritative. I'm Harriet Finch, representing Briar in both personal and corporate matters. What we discuss on this call is confidential and potentially subject to attorney-client privilege. Do you understand? Celeste nodded. I understand. We need the exact Series B closing date and time. Harriet continued. Can you access the deal documents? Celeste's hands moved off screen. I heard typing. July 25, 11 a.m., she said. Signing ceremony at the downtown investor office on Capitol Street. All parties required to attend in person for document execution. Harriet made a note. That's 7 days from now. Briar. The prenup activation has to be filed and notarized before 11 a.m. on July 25th, or the equity dilution happens first and the clause becomes moot. 7 days. The number sat on the screen between us like a countdown timer I couldn't stop. Understood, I said. Celeste, Harriet said. Briar mentioned you discovered irregular payments to a shell company, SL Consulting Services. Can you tell me how you found them? Celeste's jaw tightened. I need to tell you something. I didn't just notice this last week. I've been watching these expenses for months. The hospital room went very quiet. Months, I said. How many months? Since last fall. October. Maybe November. I was running expense reports for quarterly tax filing and noticed consulting fees to an LLC I didn't recognize. No contract on file, no invoices, just recurring wires with Corbin's approval signature. Why didn't you say anything? The words came out sharper than I meant them. Celeste looked at me through the screen. I was scared. You and Corbin run the company together. You're married. If I questioned his expenses and I was wrong about him, I'd lose my job. And if I was right... She stopped, started again. If I was right, and you knew about it, or you didn't believe me, or you chose him over the truth, I'd still lose my job. Either way. I was alone. How many people stay silent, watching something wrong because they're too afraid of losing what little they have? But seeing you in that hospital bed, Celeste continued, with 3 broken ribs and a concussion, and Corbin not even there, I realized I'd been complicit. I'd been watching him steal from the company we both work for, watching him lie to you. And I'd chosen my paycheck over saying something. I'm done being quiet. Thank you, I said, and meant it. Harriet leaned forward on her screen. Celeste, how much total do you think has been transferred to this shell account? Celeste pulled up something on her computer. The SL consulting payments total $900,000 over 14 months. But I think there's more buried under different expense codes. I started flagging anything that looked unusual. Same approval pattern. No documentation. Payments to entities I couldn't verify. I'm still compiling that list. 900,000. The number I'd calculated yesterday. Now confirmed by someone who'd been watching it happen in real time for months. Will you testify to what you've witnessed? Harriet asked. If this goes to any kind of hearing or proceeding, yes, Celeste said, no hesitation. Even if it costs you your job. I'll lose my job anyway when this comes out. At least this way I lose it for doing the right thing. We were building a case the way you build a wall, brick by brick, document by document, until it was too solid to knock down. Here's what we need, Harriet said. Celeste, compile every financial record related to SL Consulting Services and any other suspicious payments. Wire confirmations, approval signatures, email chains if you have them. Briar, you maintain your cover. Corbin can't know we're coordinating. I'll prepare the prenup activation paperwork and line up a notary for expedited filing. When do you need everything by? Celeste asked. July 24th, Harriet said. Day before closing. That gives us 1 day buffer for any last-minute issues. I can have the financial records to you by July 20, Celeste said. Maybe sooner. I've been keeping a shadow file on my personal laptop at home. Everything I flagged over the past 8 months. 8 months. She'd been documenting this since before I even knew there was something to document. There's one more element we need, Harriet said. Her voice went careful. Proof of the affair itself. Not just the financial trail. The prenup clause requires documented evidence of infidelity. Do either of you have anything that directly establishes the relationship between Corbin and Saskia Langley? I opened my mouth to say no. To say all I had was a phone call I'd overheard and a woman's voice in the background. But Celeste's face shifted. Something knowing crossed it. Something that looked like she'd been waiting for someone to ask exactly that question. I might have something, she said. Give me 48 hours to confirm. If it's what I think it is, the financial theft is going to look like a footnote. Celeste said she needed 48 hours. I gave her 72 and used the time to get out of the hospital. They discharged me on the morning of day 5, and I made sure Corbin didn't know I was leaving until I was already gone. Nina Warren met me in the hospital lobby at 9:30. She'd stayed on as daytime help for my mother, rotating shifts with Jameson. Now she was driving me home. You're sure you don't want to wait for your husband to pick you up? She asked. I'm sure, I said. I prefer to control my own schedule. We lived in Fondren, one of the older Jackson neighborhoods. Ours was a renovated Craftsman we'd bought 3 years ago when the Series A closed. Corbin had wanted something bigger. I'd wanted something we could afford if the company failed. Inside. My mother was in the living room with Jameson on a playmat. He saw me and his whole face lit up. I lowered myself to the floor next to him. slower than I wanted, and he reached for my left hand. "Welcome home," my mother said. "How are you feeling?" "Better. Thank you for everything." Nina left. The house went quiet except for Jameson's babbling. I went upstairs to the bedroom. Our bedroom. I opened Corbin's closet. The suitcase sat on the top shelf, half packed. I pulled it down, unzipped it. 2 weeks' worth of clothes. Toiletries. His good watch. The leather portfolio he used for investor meetings. A folder with apartment listings. He'd been packing before the accident. Before he heard about the truck. Before he knew I was in the ER. Before he had any reason to leave except the one he'd already decided on. There's a particular devastation in finding evidence that someone planned to abandon you before the universe gave them an excuse. I photographed every item. Then I put it back exactly as I'd found it. The next afternoon. Corbin showed up. I heard his car at 2 p.m. His key in the lock. He walked straight into the living room where I sat with Jameson. He was holding papers. The county clerk's seal.
"What the hell is this?"
His voice was tight, angry. "Divorce papers. You're not thinking straight." I shifted Jameson to my left hip. Waited. "You were in a serious accident 5 days ago. You have a concussion, 3 broken ribs, you're on pain medication, and you're making life-altering legal decisions." "I'm listening," I said. "What else?" "The accident traumatized you. You're making irrational decisions. You need to withdraw this filing, and we can talk when you're actually capable of clear judgment." He was calling my clarity confusion. Classic. "I'm completely lucid," I said. "The doctors cleared me for discharge. I'm not on pain medication beyond over-the-counter anti-inflammatories. And I filed those papers after careful consultation with my attorney." "Your attorney?" He said it like a betrayal. "Harriet Finch, you've been planning this." "Yes." "Since when?" "Since the night of the accident." His face changed. Calculation. "Briar, listen. I know things have been strained. The company, the Series B stress, new baby, it's a lot. But this is extreme. We can work through this."
"Can we?"
"Of course. 8 years of marriage, a son together, a company we built together. You're going to throw that away because of work stress, postpartum hormones, a car accident that shook you up?" The gaslighting was almost elegant. Reduce my decision to irrationality, frame my clarity as confusion. I stood up, set Jameson in his bouncer, turned to face Corbin directly. "You're absolutely right," I said. "I was in shock that night, disoriented, not thinking clearly." Relief crossed his face. "But now I'm completely clear-headed," I continued. "And clear-headed means I know exactly what I'm doing." The relief vanished. "Then you'll withdraw the filing?" "No, that's not what clear-headed means. The best response to someone trying to make you doubt your sanity is to give them nothing to work with." He stared at me, looking for the emotional reaction he expected. Tears, anger, accusation, confrontation. Something he could work with. Something he could redirect or deflect. I gave him nothing. "You're serious?" he said finally. "Yes." "This is insane." "The filing stands. You'll receive formal notice of the prenup activation within the week. I suggest you consult your own attorney." "Prenup activation." His voice went sharp. "What are you talking about?" "Read the paperwork. It's all there." He looked at the divorce filing like he was seeing it for the first time. Started to say something. Stopped. "This is about the Series B. You're trying to leverage the timing." Interesting guess. Wrong, but interesting. "I'm not trying to leverage anything," I said. I'm dissolving our marriage. The timing is what it is." He stared at me for another long moment. Then he turned and walked out. Didn't slam the door, just left. I noticed he never once asked about Jameson. Never looked at him, never acknowledged his son was in the room. My phone buzzed 30 seconds after his car pulled away. Text from Celeste. "Found what I was looking for. Calling you in 5 minutes." The affair evidence was coming, and I hadn't even had to ask twice. 5 minutes exactly. Celeste called right on time, and the first thing she said was, "You need to see these emails before I explain them." "Sending now." "Already sent. Check your personal email, not the company address." I opened my laptop with my left hand, navigated to my personal Gmail. The message from Celeste was there. Timestamp 6:46 p.m. Subject line, "Evidence." One attachment, a zip file. "I'm opening it now," I said. I pulled 14 months of internal email approvals for Saskia's consulting fees from our company system. Celeste said, "Every wire approval Corbin sent had to route through our financial tracking software. He approved everything from his corporate email account." The zip file extracted. 43 PDF files, each one a screenshot of an email chain. "Just business approvals?" I asked. "No." Celeste's voice went quiet. "Some of them... There's personal language, references to plans after the Series B closes, references to you." Briar. He documented his own conspiracy. I opened the first file. May 2023, subject line, "Payment Authorization, Strategic Advisory, Corbin to Accounts Payable." CC'd to no one. "Please process payment of $47,000 to SL Consulting Services per attached invoice. Category, Investor Relations Advisory. Professional. Routine." I opened file number 7. November 2023. Subject line, "RE November Consulting Fee." Email chain between Corbin and Saskia. Saskia. "Received this month's payment. Thank you for staying on schedule." "Of course. Looking forward to our meeting Thursday. Dinner after." Saskia. "Always." He put it all in the company email system. Every lie, every payment, every flirtation, archived, searchable, discoverable. "Are you seeing it?" Celeste asked. "Yes." "It gets worse. Keep going." I opened file 15. March 2024. Subject line, "RE Series B Timeline." Saskia to Corbin. "After the Series B closes, we can finally move forward without complications." Agreed. Just a few more months of maintaining appearances. File 23. April 2024. Subject line, "RE Expense Adjustments." Corbin to Saskia. "Increased your consulting fee to $85K monthly as discussed. She never questions these expense categories." File 31. May 2024. Subject line, "RE Closing Timeline Confirmed." Corbin to Saskia. July 25 confirmed. After that date, equity structure shifts and we move forward as planned. She's so focused on the numbers, she'll never see this coming. I sat very still. There's a particular kind of clarity that comes from reading someone write that you'll never see them coming. "Briar," Celeste's voice. "Are you okay?" "I'm reading," I said. I went through all 43 files. Methodically. Screenshot by screenshot, the progression was clear. May 2023, professional payment authorizations. June through August 2023. Payments continue. Still professional. September 2023. First hint of personal relationship. Dinner after the investor called. October 2023. Payments increase. Personal references increase. November 2023 through January 2024. The affair is established. References to our plan begin appearing. February 2024. Jameson is born. Emails reference complications and timeline adjustments. March through July 2024. Our plan becomes explicit. References to Series B closing date. References to me as obstacle to be managed. They'd put it all in writing. Every plan, every lie, every month for 14 months. And Corbin had done it from his company email account, where our IT systems archived everything for 7 years as corporate policy. This is enough, I said. This is more than enough. I can testify that these came from our official email archive, Celeste said. No tampering, no fabrication. These are corporate records. Send everything to Harriet. Her email is on the divorce filing. Already done. I sent it to her 10 minutes before I called you. I closed the laptop, leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes. Thank you, I said. Celeste, thank you. I should have told you sooner, she said. Months ago. You told me when it mattered. That's what counts. We hung up. I sat in my home office in the quiet house. My mother had taken Jameson upstairs for bed. The evening light was fading through the window. My phone buzzed. New text message, unknown number. Hi, Briar. This is Saskia Langley from the Series A advisory team. Corbin mentioned your accident. Hope you're recovering well. I stared at the screen. She was texting me. The woman who'd been stealing from my company for 14 months. The woman who'd been sleeping with my husband. The woman who'd written, "She'll never see this coming," in a corporate email. She was texting me to ask about my recovery. Another message appeared. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help during this difficult time. Predators always check if their prey is still wounded before they move in for the kill. I looked at her number, added it to my contacts, saved it under the evidence folder in my encrypted files. Then I typed back with my left thumb, "I'm fine, have a nice day." Sent it. The message showed delivered, then read. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again, then nothing. She had no idea. They thought I was the same person I was 2 weeks ago, injured, overwhelmed, too focused on recovery and the baby to notice what they were doing. They didn't know what I knew, and I was going to keep it that way for exactly 3 more days. July 25th was 72 hours away. The Series B closing, the board meeting, the moment when equity would shift and their plan would either succeed or collapse. I had emails, I had financial records, I had witness testimony. I had a prenup clause they'd forgotten existed. And I had 3 days to make sure everything was positioned exactly right before I burned their entire conspiracy to the ground. I spent those 3 days positioning every piece exactly where it needed to be. Harriet's office at 9 on the morning of July 23rd smelled like leather and old law books, and the notary was already waiting. Grace Sterling was the notary public Harriet used for sensitive documents. Mid-50s, reading glasses on a chain. The efficient discretion of someone who'd witnessed 1,000 legal endings. She had her stamp and seal laid out on the conference table like surgical instruments. "Morning," Harriet said. "Let's walk through the mechanics one more time." She spread the prenup activation documents across the table. 3 copies, all identical. 3 signatures required, Harriet said. Yours, mine as your attorney of record, and Grace's as notary witness. We execute these documents this morning. Grace notarizes them right now, then I hold them until Friday morning. Friday is July 25, I said. Correct. I file these at the Hinds County Clerk's office at 8 a.m., the moment they're time-stamped and entered into the system. The equity transfer is legally complete. The prenup activation becomes part of the court record.
And the board meeting?
Starts at 11 a.m., according to the investor schedule you forwarded. By the time Corbin walks into that boardroom, the transfer is already done. He just won't know it yet. The time he walked into that boardroom tomorrow, he would already be nobody on paper. Grace looked up from the documents. I've notarized a lot of prenups over the years. This is the most precisely timed activation I've ever witnessed. Timing matters, Harriet said. I signed all 3 copies. Harriet signed. Grace witnessed and applied her seal with a decisive thump of the embosser. Done, Grace said. She slid the documents into a manila envelope, handed them to Harriet. Good luck tomorrow. After Grace left, Harriet and I sat in her conference room with the sealed envelope between us. Can I ask you something? I said. Of course. Why the board meeting? Why not just file it and let him find out later? Harriet leaned back in her chair. Because legal justice and actual justice are different things. I can file these documents at 8 a.m., and by 8:05, Corbin Mercer will have lost his equity stake. That's legal justice. But if no one sees it happen except him, he'll spin it. He'll tell investors you're unstable, that the divorce is contentious, that you're trying to sabotage the Series B out of spite. And the board meeting. Everyone who matters will be in that room. The investors, the board, Saskia probably, since she's been advising. When we present the evidence and the equity transfer simultaneously, they all see exactly what he is. They see the emails, they see the theft, they see the affair. They see that you had legal grounds and documented proof. That's actual justice. Justice can be private, or it can be witnessed. And sometimes the witness part is what makes it real. Then that's what we do, I said. I drove home through midday traffic. My mother had Jameson at a pediatrician appointment. The house was empty. I went upstairs to the nursery. Stood in the doorway looking at the room we'd painted last winter. Pale blue walls, white crib. Mobile, with little airplanes that Corbin's mother had sent when Jameson was born. Tomorrow, everything would change. The company, the marriage, the future I'd thought we were building. But Jameson's future. That was what this was actually about. I opened the drawer of the changing table. Found the hospital ID bracelet I'd saved. White plastic with my name and the admission date from the accident. July 15th, 2024. The day everything broke open. I held it for a moment, then put it back. That night, after my mother went to bed, I stood in the nursery doorway watching Jameson sleep. 5 months old. He didn't know that tomorrow his father would lose everything. He didn't know that his mother had spent 2 weeks building a legal case that would destroy the family structure he'd been born into. He just knew he was safe, fed, warm, loved. I walked to the crib. Looked down at him sleeping on his back, tiny hands and fists near his face. I won't let you grow up in a company run by a liar, I whispered. I won't let you learn that dishonesty pays. I won't let him teach you that betrayal is acceptable if you're clever enough about it. Motherhood is the willingness to burn down anything that threatens your child's future, even if it's a company you built with your own hands. This isn't about punishing him, I said to my sleeping son. It's about protecting you. I stood there another minute. Then I went to my bedroom. Tomorrow at 8 a.m. Harriet would file the documents. At 11 a.m. the board meeting would start. Somewhere between those 2 moments, I would stop being the person who carried everything quietly. The documents would speak for me. My phone lit up on the dresser. Email notification. Sender Corbin Mercer. Time 10:47 p.m. Subject board meeting time change. I opened it. Investor request. Moving board meeting to 10 a.m. tomorrow instead of 11. See you there. The timeline had just compressed by an hour. I read it twice. Tried to think through what it meant. Harriet was filing at 8 a.m. The meeting was now at 10 a.m. instead of 11 a.m. That was still 2 hours. Still enough time for the filing to be complete before Corbin walked into the room. But it was tighter. Much tighter. And why had the investors requested an earlier time? What had changed? I was calling Harriet before I even left the bedroom. Harriet answered on the first ring. They moved it to 10 a.m., I said. 1 hour earlier. I saw your text. That's fine. We adjust. I'll file at 7:30 instead of 8. Still gives us 2.5 hours before the meeting starts. Is that enough time? More than enough. The county clerk opens at 7:30. I'll be first in line. By 7:45, the paperwork will be filed and timestamped. By 10 a.m., you'll legally own 89% of the company. The meeting time doesn't change anything except how early I need to get my coffee. While I was on the phone with Harriet at 7 that morning, adjusting our filing time, Celeste was texting me what she'd just overheard in the office hallway. My phone buzzed. I pulled it away from my ear to look. Celeste. At office early, overheard in hallway. Another buzz. Celeste. C to S. She's been too quiet, too calm. Another. Celeste. S to C. She's recovering. She doesn't have enough information to do anything. I put Harriet on speaker. Hold on, I said. Celeste is sending me something. Another text appeared. Celeste, CI. Move the meeting up to 10 to close this before anything else can happen. I read it twice. He knew something was wrong. He just thought he was moving fast enough to outrun it. Harriet, are you seeing this? Seeing what? I forwarded Celeste's texts. Waited while Harriet read them. He's nervous, Harriet said. Good. Nervous people make mistakes. But he doesn't actually know anything, does he? He's just reacting to the divorce filing and the fact that I haven't been emotional about it. Exactly. He's used to you being accommodating, supportive. When you filed for divorce with zero warning and then went silent, it broke his pattern recognition. He's trying to accelerate his timeline, to get ahead of whatever you might do. But he has no idea what you actually have. Another text from Celeste. Celeste. They're in his office now, door closed. She looked confident. He looked worried. I typed back, thank you. Stay safe. Don't let them see you watching. Celeste. I'm in my office working, just happened to be in the hallway when they arrived. I turned back to Harriet on speaker. So we proceed exactly as planned, I said. Exactly as planned, Harriet confirmed. 7:30 a.m. filing. By the time that meeting starts, it's already over. We hung up. I sat in my kitchen with my phone and my coffee and the quiet knowledge that in less than 24 hours, everything would be different. That evening at 8:30, another email from Celeste arrived. Subject line, final audit. I opened it on my laptop. The email was brief. Final audit attached. Cash theft, $900,000 over 14 months. Equity at risk, current value $12 to $15 million. Post Series B value $40 million plus. Every wire. Every approval. Every category code documented. This is everything I could find. It's enough. The attachment was a 40-page Excel spreadsheet. I scrolled through it slowly. Every payment to SL Consulting Services. Every approval signature. Every expense category rotation. Every email authorization. Cross-referenced with bank records, corporate filings, and email timestamps. $900,000 in cash theft was just the visible part. The real target was the equity. My equity. The company we'd built was currently valued at $15 million. Post Series B. With the new funding and the growth trajectory, Analysts projected 40 million within 2 years. Corbin held 38%. At current value, that was over $5 million. Post-Series B dilution, it would still be worth $8 million or more. And if I hadn't found out, if the prenup clause hadn't existed, if I'd stayed quiet and accommodating and focused on the baby while he restructured the company around me, he and Saskia would have had everything. $900,000 is a lot of money, until you realize it was just the warm-up for stealing millions. I saved the spreadsheet to my encrypted evidence folder. Replied to Celeste. Received. Thank you. This is everything we need. At 10 p.m., I sat in my home office and reviewed the complete package one final time. Financial audit, $900K. Documented theft equity scheme targeting $12 to $15 million current value. Email trail. 43 messages showing conspiracy from inception through present. Shell Company registration Saskia Langley, Incorporated, February 2023, 1 month before Series A. Prenup activation documents, signed, notarized, ready to file at 7:30 a.m. tomorrow. Exchanges Saskia's probe about my recovery, showing she had no idea I knew. Timeline, 14 months of systematic theft and deception. Preparation is what you do in the dark so that when the lights come on, you're already standing exactly where you need to be. Tomorrow at 7:30 a.m. Harriet would walk into the Hinds County Clerk's office with a manila envelope. By 7:45, Corbin would lose 38% of the company without knowing it yet. By 10 a.m., I would walk into that board meeting owning 89% of a company he thought he controlled. They thought I didn't have enough information. They had no idea I had everything. My email dinged. 10:17 p.m. Sender, Marcus Feldman. Lead Series B investor. Subject tomorrow's agenda. I opened it. Briar, attached is the finalized agenda for tomorrow's 10 a.m. board meeting. Looking forward to closing this round and moving forward with the growth plan. Best, Marcus. I downloaded the attachment. 5-page PDF. Board meeting agenda, July 25, 2024. 10 a.m. Welcome and opening remarks, M. Feldman. 10:15 a.m. Series B final terms presentation, C. Mercer. 10:45 a.m. Equity structure and dilution review, C. Mercer. 11:15 a.m. Document signing and closing. I scrolled through all 5 pages. Corbin was listed as presenter for every substantive item. My name didn't appear anywhere. Not as presenter, not as attendee, not even in the equity structure breakdown. They'd planned this meeting assuming I wouldn't even be in the room. They'd planned the meeting assuming I wouldn't be there. That I'd stay home, recovering. That I'd let them restructure my company around me. I went to my home office and printed everything. Every email, every bank statement, every wire confirmation, Celeste's audit, the Shell Company registration, Corbin's calendar, the board meeting schedule. Then I spread it all across the bedroom floor. For the past hour, I'd been arranging them chronologically, building a timeline. Each piece told part of the story, but I hadn't seen the whole picture until now. March 2023. First unexplained withdrawal, $47,000. May 2023. Saskia Langley hired as Series A advisor. I remembered Corbin bringing her to the office. Professional, competent. I'd barely noticed her. May 2023. Second withdrawal, $68,000. June through August, steady payments. 52, 73, 61,000. September 2023. I'd announced the pregnancy. October 2023. Withdrawals jumped to 85,000 monthly, consistent. February 2024. Jameson born, February 18. March 2024. Withdrawal jumped to 112,000. The month Corbin suggested I take more maternity leave. Focus on the baby, he'd said. May 2024. Celeste first flagged irregularities. Same month I'd overheard that conversation about inheritance complications. July 15. The accident. July 18. Power of attorney attempt. July 25. Tomorrow. Board meeting. My phone buzzed. Baby monitor alert. I glanced at the feed. Jameson stirring but not awake. Small fist near his mouth. I watched for 10 seconds. He settled. I returned to the timeline. This isn't abstract corporate betrayal. They plan to steal my son's inheritance. I opened my laptop. Cross-referenced Celeste's audit dates with Corbin's digital calendar. We'd kept a shared family calendar since we got married. Every major withdrawal matched a night he'd worked late. Client meeting, audit training, investor dinner. I remembered those nights. Coming home after he did, smelling unfamiliar perfume, dismissing it as paranoia. It wasn't paranoia. It was evidence I'd ignored. The conspiracy began in May 2023, 15 months ago, when Saskia was hired. The affair and the thefts started simultaneously. This was never a romance that went too far. This was always a calculated financial plot. But something changed in February 2024. I stood, walked to the bedroom window, pressed my forehead against cool glass. Outside. Jackson's downtown was silent, streetlights reflecting off parked cars, closed storefronts. Somewhere in this city, Corbin and Saskia were probably together. Confident, I let myself feel the rage for 30 seconds. Then I sat back down. Rage is useless. Precision wins. I searched Mississippi Inheritance Law, Children. The results loaded. Mississippi law provides automatic heir protections for minor children. If a parent owns business interests, children have protected claims on that equity. Jameson's birth didn't complicate their affair. His birth complicated their ability to steal the company. Before February, they had time. They could move slowly, build the shell account, keep everything under the radar. After Jameson was born, the legal landscape changed. If something happened to me, my son had protected inheritance rights that would trigger audits, legal reviews, court oversight. The thefts accelerated. Amounts doubled. Corbin pushed me toward extended maternity leave, got me out of the office, away from the financials. The board meeting was scheduled May 30th. 8 weeks ago. When I was still on leave, when I seemed compliant. They were always planning to close this financing in late July. The accident on July 15 wasn't their plan. It was an opportunity. Celeste's text from earlier said Corbin told Saskia I didn't have enough information. They knew I was investigating, but they thought they'd moved fast enough. They thought wrong. I photographed the complete timeline layout. Every document, every connection. Saved to encrypted cloud storage, CC'd Harriet's firm. Then I called her cell. Midnight. She answered on the second ring. Briar, I see the whole picture now, I said. 15 months of theft. The conspiracy started when they hired her. My son's birth threatened their inheritance angle, so they accelerated. The accident was opportunistic, not causal. They think I don't have enough information. They're wrong. Silence. Then, what do you want to do? Confirm the plan, board meeting day. Not sooner, not later. I want them confident until the moment I burn it down. Confirmed, Harriet said. 7:30 a.m. filing. You'll own the company before they know what's happening. Good. Get some sleep if you can. Tomorrow changes everything. We hung up. My phone buzzed. Text from Harriet. 12:01 a.m. Confirmed. All documents filed and ready. Forensic accountant will attend board meeting as your guest. Police fraud unit briefed, but holding until your signal. Sheriff coordinating simultaneous service of restraining orders. You'll walk in as victim. You'll walk out as prosecutor. Sleep if you can. Tomorrow you take your company back. I sat on the bedroom floor, surrounded by evidence. Timeline complete. Conspiracy mapped. Legal apparatus staged. My hands weren't shaking. My breathing was even. The wounded wife who left the hospital 5 days ago was gone. What remained was the CEO who built a $15 million company from nothing, and who would defend it with the same ruthlessness they'd used trying to steal it. I slept 3 hours, woke at 5 a.m., showered, fed Jameson, kissed my mother goodbye, drove to Harriet's office in the pre-dawn quiet. Now I was sitting in Harriet's law office at 6:47 a.m., watching her notary stamp a line over the signature line that would end my marriage and save my company. Grace Sterling pressed the embosser down with a decisive thump. The seal appeared in raised gold. Done, Grace said. She slid the documents into a manila envelope, handed it to Harriet. Good luck today. After Grace left, Harriet spread 3 documents across her conference table. Walk me through the timing one more time, I said. The moment I file these documents at the county clerk, the system sends automated notice to all parties. Harriet said. Corbin's attorney, if he has one, gets an email. We lose surprise. So we notarize now. File after I confront him. Exactly. You text me from the boardroom. I file while you're still talking. By the time he understands what's happening, the restraining order is already active. My hand shook slightly as I signed my name on the final affidavit. Not fear. Adrenaline anticipating what would come in 2 hours. What happens after you file? I asked. Simultaneously, fraud complaint filed with Jackson Police Department. Emergency motion for corporate access freeze. Personal restraining order effective immediately. Child custody emergency hearing scheduled for tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Everything at once. Everything at once. Harriet confirmed. Glenn Rousseau will be at the board meeting. You invited him as a financial consultant weeks ago. Perfectly normal. Corbin doesn't know he's a forensic specialist until Glenn presents the audit findings. And Saskia? She's not on the board, so she won't be in the room. Sheriff serves her restraining order at her apartment at 2:15 p.m., exactly when your board meeting hits the fraud section. Simultaneous. They both realize what's happening at the same moment, but they're physically separated, can't coordinate a response. I checked my phone. 7:43 a.m. The board meeting started at 10 a.m. 2 hours and 17 minutes. Are you ready? Harriet asked. Yes. I drove home. Pulled into the driveway at 9:22 a.m. Inside. My mother was in the kitchen feeding Jameson breakfast in his high chair. Ivy Mercer, 68, widowed 6 years, the person who raised me to build things that last and defend what matters. She'd been staying with me since the accident. Knew everything. The affair, the theft, the prenup clause, the plan for today. How did it go? She asked. Everything's ready. She handed me a coffee mug, touched my shoulder. You know Corbin will fight ugly, she said. He already did. He lost. He just doesn't know it yet. She smiled, sad but proud. Then go finish it. Jameson and I will be here when you get back. Walking into my house, it smelled like coffee and baby cereal. Ivy's presence, normalcy, the life Corbin tried to destroy. I kissed Jameson's forehead. He grabbed my finger with his whole fist. Be back soon, I told him. Upstairs in my bedroom. I opened the closet. Found the navy suit I wore to my first investor pitch 8 years ago. The day I walked into a room full of men who thought I was too young, too female, too inexperienced to run a tech company. I'd proven them wrong then. I'd prove Corbin wrong. Now, before I tell you what happens in that boardroom, I need to ask, are you still here with me? Comment your honest reaction in one sentence. What would you do if this were your company? The next part contains some recreated details for narrative impact, but the lesson is what matters. If dramatized storytelling isn't for you, you can stop here. I dressed carefully. Buttoned the jacket. Checked the mirror. Then I opened my nightstand drawer. Found the hospital ID bracelet I'd kept since discharge. White plastic. My name. Admission date, July 15, 2024. Discharge, July 18, 2024. Physical proof I survived what they did. I slipped it into my jacket pocket. The woman in the mirror barely looked like the one who left this house 11 days ago for a routine drive. That woman trusted Elame, accommodated, made space for other people's comfort. This woman knew exactly what she was worth and what she was owed. Today isn't the day he thinks it is, I said to my reflection. Downstairs. My mother was standing on the front porch with Jameson in her arms. She waved as I walked to the car. I touched the hospital bracelet in my pocket once. Then I started the engine. 22-minute drive to the office. Board meetings started at 10 a.m. I pulled onto the highway. My phone buzzed. Text from Corbin. Running late. Might miss first 15 minutes of board meeting. Start without me if needed. I read it twice. He wasn't running late. He was establishing alibi distance from Saskia before the meeting, making sure they weren't seen arriving together, creating the appearance of separation. They were still coordinating. They still thought they were winning. I didn't reply, just kept driving. The hospital bracelet sat in my pocket like a talisman. Proof of survival. Promise of justice. By the time Corbin walked into that boardroom, everything would already be over. He just wouldn't know it yet. The hospital bracelet was still in my coat pocket. I touched it like a talisman as I pushed through the glass doors of Mercer Solutions headquarters at 10:47 a.m. The lobby felt both familiar and alien. Same marble floors, same reception desk. But now it was a battlefield I was entering with weapons concealed and allies positioned. Harriet was already there, standing near the elevator bank with her briefcase containing the forensic report. Celeste arrived 30 seconds behind me, laptop bag over her shoulder. We exchanged no words, just a nod. Glenn Russo appeared from the stairwell, slightly out of breath. Update, I said quietly. They started early, Glenn said. Corbin introduced her as provisional CFO candidate at 10:30. He's walking them through Q2 projections right now, the fake ones. Saskia's doing the presentation. The fake ones. My projections, my format, my company's future narrated by the woman who'd been stealing from it for over a year. The anger that flared was clean and cold. The kind that sharpened focus instead of clouding it. Positions, I asked. Dixon's asking good questions, Glenn reported. Ramirez looks skeptical. Cold's taking notes. They don't know what they're looking at, but they sense something's off. Good. The board wasn't stupid. Howard Dixon had built 3 companies before joining ours. Carmen Ramirez had survived 2 recessions. Derek Kolb could smell cooked books from across a room. They just needed the right information. What did betrayal smell like in this lobby? It smelled like expensive floor polish and the faint ozone from the HVAC system and my own fear sweat beneath the blazer I'd chosen because Corbin once said it made me look too aggressive for client meetings. Good. Today I needed aggressive. We stepped into the elevator, Harriet, Celeste, Glenn, and me. The doors closed. No one spoke as we ascended. I watched the floor numbers tick upward. 1, 2, 3. My reflection in the polished steel looked like someone I was still learning to recognize. Thinner, harder, older than the woman who'd left this building 14 months ago on maternity leave. Fourth floor. The doors opened. The corridor to the boardroom stretched ahead. Through the glass wall of the conference room, I could see them. The long table, the presentation screen showing a revenue graph I knew was inflated by 18%. And the people. Corbin at the head of the table, in his charcoal suit, gesturing with the confidence of a man who thought he'd already won. Saskia beside him with the laser pointer, her blonde hair in that elegant twist, wearing cobalt blue, the color I'd told Corbin was my favorite, years ago. The board members arranged along both sides, Dixon, Ramirez, Kolb, Yates, and Brennan. My phone was in my hand. The draft text to Harriet was ready. Now. One word, one tap, and the forensic report would get emailed to every board member simultaneously. But not yet. First, they needed to see my face. I touched the hospital bracelet one more time. Then I opened the door. The conversation didn't stop immediately. Saskia was mid-sentence about sustainable growth trajectories, but heads turned. Dixon saw me first, and his expression shifted from polite attention to genuine surprise, and then something that looked like relief. Ramirez smiled. Kolb half rose from his chair. "Briar," he said, and the warmth in his voice was real. Corbin's confident smile froze mid-curve. Saskia went pale, the laser pointer dropping slightly, the red dot trembling on the projection screen. I didn't go to the guest chairs along the wall. I walked to my seat, the equity partner chair. Third from the head on the right side. The one with the brass nameplate that still said B. Mercer, CFO and co-founder. Harriet and Celeste flanked me, taking positions according that were both protective and presentational. "Good morning," I said. My voice was steady. "I apologize for the interruption."
Briar, what a surprise.
Corbin said, recovering fast. Smile back in place, but there was a tightness around his eyes. "We weren't expecting you."
Are you? Is everything all right? Is Jameson okay?
Using our son's name as a shield, as if concern for our child could camouflage 14 months of theft. "Jameson's perfect," I said. "He's with my mother. I'm here for the board meeting."
Of course,
Corbin said. Too quickly. "We were just reviewing Q2 performance and discussing future CFO arrangements given your situation. But there's no rush on any of this. Perhaps we should table the discussion and I'd prefer we continue," I said. My briefcase was on the table now. Inside it, visible through the open flap, a folder labeled Sworn Affidavit in Celeste's precise handwriting. A USB drive. Documents with highlighter marks. Corbin's gaze dropped to it, then back to my face. Saskia hadn't moved. She was still standing by the screen, laser pointer in hand, looking like someone who'd just realized the floor might be lava. Dixon leaned forward. "Briar, it's good to see you. Are you back in an official capacity or—" "I'm here to present information relevant to this meeting's agenda," I said. "Information the board needs before making any decisions about company leadership." The room went very quiet. Ramirez was watching me with sharp attention. Kolb had set down his pen. Yates and Brennan exchanged glances. Corbin stood. His voice, when he spoke, was shaking just slightly. "Just enough." "Briar," he said. "You don't need to do this here." And there it was, the admission. Not, "I don't know what you're talking about." Not, "This isn't the time for personal matters." Just, "You don't need to do this here." Which meant he knew exactly what I was about to do. Knew exactly what he'd done. Knew he caught. I pressed send. The text to Harriet left my phone at 11:03 a.m. One word. Now. And across town, the legal machinery I'd spent 10 days building began to move. Fraud complaint, restraining orders, emergency corporate motions, all filing simultaneously in 3 different jurisdictions. I set the phone face down on the boardroom table and looked at Corbin. He was still standing, still wearing that expression of a man who thought he could talk his way out of anything if he just found the right words. "Celeste," I said quietly, "please begin the financial presentation." Corbin moved before Celeste could reach for her laptop. "Actually," he said, turning to the board members with his palms open. "Reasonable, concerned. Before we get to that, I need to address something with the board." Howard Dixon frowned. "Corbin, Briar called this meeting. Let her— I know she seems fine." Corbin cut him off, and his voice had shifted into a tone I recognized from 1,000 private arguments. The one that said, "I'm the reasonable adult, and you're being irrational." But the neurologist said head injuries can affect decision-making for weeks. 10 days ago, she was in the ER with a serious concussion. She hasn't been cleared to return to work. I'm worried about her judgment right now. He let that hang in the air, wife. Head trauma, unstable judgment, and I watched the board members' faces shift slightly. Carmen Ramirez's expression softened. Derek Kolb glanced at me with new concern. Saskia nodded from her seat by the presentation screen. A small, sympathetic gesture that said, "Poor Briar, so fragile, so confused." It was the same manipulation he'd used on me 2 weeks ago when I confronted him about the divorce filing. The same words, judgment, emotional, not thinking clearly. The words that had made me doubt myself, second-guess my own perception, wonder if I was imagining things. Now, hearing them performed for an audience, I felt nothing. Not anger, not hurt, just a cold recognition of the pattern. He sounded desperate, hollow, obvious. Carmen leaned forward. "Briar, do you need to postpone?" "No," I said. "Celeste, the presentation." Celeste clicked the remote. The boardroom screen illuminated. The spreadsheet filled the wall behind Corbin's head. 14 months of wire transfers. Dates in the left column, amounts in the center. Recipient account information on the right. Every row showed a transaction from Mercer Solutions' operating account to something called SL Consulting Services, LLC. The amounts varied: $52,000, $68,000, $71,000, $49,000, but the pattern was unmistakable. May 2023 through July 2024, the total at the bottom, $900,000. Every transaction had Corbin's authorization code. Saskia's name appeared in the rightmost column. Registered agent, sole officer. May 2023 through July 2024, Celeste said, her voice professional, neutral. $900,000 in unauthorized transfers, all signed by CFO Corbin Mercer. Corbin spun to face the screen. And for a second, his mask slipped, pure shock. The expression of someone who didn't know the evidence existed in this format. This complete. This damning. Then he recovered. Those are legitimate vendor payments. Briar, you're misunderstanding. I'm Glenn Russo, forensic accountant. Glenn stood from his position near the door. And his voice was calm, factual. The kind that accountants use when explaining math that doesn't lie. There are no vendor invoices, contracts, or deliverables associated with any of these payments. The recipient LLC lists Ms. Langley as sole officer. The company has no record of ever conducting business with SL Consulting Services. The boardroom projector hummed quietly, casting spreadsheet glow across 9 faces, 3 confused, 2 calculating, 2 guilty. One furious, one satisfied. The numbers didn't need interpretation. They just sat there, immovable as gravity. Howard Dixon leaned forward, reading the screen line by line. Carmen Ramirez pulled out her tablet, started taking notes with quick, efficient taps. Derek Kolb had gone pale. And I knew why. He represented the investors who were supposed to finalize the $8 million Series B financing today. And the company's books had just revealed massive fraud. Undisclosed liabilities, material misrepresentation. Corbin tried to speak, but Howard raised one hand to silence him. 900,000 over 14 months. Derek said slowly. That's material misrepresentation of operating expenses. Carmen looked at me. Briar, do you have documentation beyond this spreadsheet? Bank records, authorization logs, shell company registration with Saskia's signature, deleted emails we recovered, I said. All of it's in your board portal as of 3 minutes ago. Saskia stood abruptly. I don't have to listen to this. Sit down. Carmen's voice was ice, not a suggestion. Saskia sat. Corbin's performance was collapsing now. The concerned husband persona replaced by something defensive and cornered. His voice went sharp. You're taking her word over mine? She's been unstable for months, paranoid, imagining conspiracies. Corbin? Howard didn't raise his voice, but Corbin stopped talking. Not now. The silence that followed felt like the moment after a structure fails. That breath before debris settles. Carmen was scrolling through the board portal on her tablet. Eric had his phone out, texting someone, probably the Series B investors. Probably damage control. Howard was still staring at the spreadsheet, jaw tight. He wasn't asking about the theft. He wasn't asking about betrayal or marriage or how I was feeling. When he finally spoke, the question was pure business. The Series B closing is scheduled for 1 p.m. today, Howard said, looking directly at me. Does this affect today's valuation? Harriet stood. Before I could answer Howard's question about the financing, Harriet rose from her position beside me and addressed the board directly. Her voice was professional, measured, the tone of an attorney who had done this 1,000 times. I'm Harriet Finch, representing Mrs. Mercer in both criminal and domestic matters. As of 11:03 this morning, we filed. This is a board meeting, not a divorce proceeding. Corbin cut her off, his voice sharp. You have no. Let her finish. Carmen's voice was ice. Harriet nodded once, then continued. We filed multiple motions with Hinds County Court, fraud complaint, emergency restraining orders, and petition for dissolution of marriage. The fraud complaint names both Mr. Mercer and Ms. Langley as co-conspirators in systematic theft of corporate assets. Corbin's face went white. Not pale white, like someone had pulled a plug and drained all the blood out. Harriet reached into her briefcase and distributed stapled documents to each board member. Howard, Carmen, Derek, the 2 others whose names I'd already forgotten in the chaos. What you're holding is the prenuptial agreement executed between Briar and Corbin Mercer, dated May 18, 2022. This version was updated during the Series A funding round to include protections for company equity. I watched the board members flip through pages. Carmen read quickly, her finger tracing lines. Derek scanned the headers, looking for the relevant section. Page 7, Section 4C, Harriet said. Any marital infidelity triggers automatic equity share transfer to the non-offending spouse. Signed by both parties. Notarized by Grace Sterling, the same notary who handled your Series A paperwork. Corbin stood abruptly. That's not the version I signed. This is fabricated. Harriet slid a second page across the table to Carmen. Corbin's signature, bold and confident, dated May 18, 2022, the notary seal clear and official.
Your signature was notarized by Grace Sterling,
Harriet said calmly. Would you like me to call her?
I remembered that day.
May 2022, right after we closed Series A.
We were in the attorney's office downtown,
signing stacks of documents, operating agreements, bylaws amendments, investor rights provisions. Corbin kept checking his watch because he had a golf meeting at 3. The lawyer asked if he wanted to review the prenup updates, and he waved her off. Said he trusted me. Signed without reading. I watched him scrawl his name across 4 different signature lines in under 90 seconds. Now he was staring at that signature like it belonged to someone else. Harriet distributed a second packet thicker, bound with a black clip. Evidence of infidelity. Hotel receipts showing charges in Mr. Mercer's name. Rooms occupied by both defendants. Text message transcripts. Bank records documenting payments for jewelry and gifts delivered to Ms. Langley's address.
Photographs time-stamped over the past 6 months.
Derek opened his copy, flipped 2 pages, then closed it. His expression said he'd seen enough. Carmen read further, methodical. When she looked up, her gaze moved between Corbin and Saskia like she was cataloging evidence for a verdict she'd already reached. Mr. Mercer, she said, do you contest these allegations? Corbin's hands were braced on the table. His voice, when he spoke, had lost all its polished confidence. Briar, we can work this out privately.
You don't need to destroy. Answer the question.
Corbin, I said quietly. Do you contest the evidence of your affair with Saskia Langley? He didn't answer. That silence was answer enough. Howard read the prenup clause aloud, his voice carrying the weight of someone who was about to make a ruling that would alter the company's entire structure. Section 4C, upon substantiated evidence of marital infidelity by either party. All equity shares held by the offending party shall transfer immediately and irrevocably to the non-offending spouse. He flipped to a different document, company bylaws. Article 6, Section 2. Equity held by married officers is subject to valid marital agreements on file with the corporate secretary. Carmen picked up her phone, tapped the screen. Checking corporate records now. 30 seconds of silence. Confirmed. This prenuptial agreement is on file, properly executed, legally binding under Mississippi law. Derek pulled out a calculator. Started entering figures. His voice was quiet when he read the result. Corbin held 38% equity. Briar held 51%. Outside investors, 11%. He looked up. With the transfer, Briar now controls 89%. 89%. The number appeared on Derek's screen, and I stared at it like a word in a foreign language I was only beginning to understand. It meant I owned my company the way I'd owned it before marriage. Before I trusted the wrong person. Before I almost lost everything. Carmen's voice was formal. Final. Corbin Mercer. Effective immediately. You are removed from CFO position and all board authority. Security will escort you from the building. Corbin sat frozen, staring at the equity calculation on the projection screen. The confident man who had walked into this room 90 minutes ago had been replaced by someone smaller, cornered, trapped by his own signature from 2 years ago. Saskia stood abruptly. Her chair scraped across the floor, loud in the sudden quiet. She was looking at Corbin with an expression I couldn't quite parse. Not remorse, not fear. Fury. You said this valuation would be ours, she said, and her voice was shaking. Not with fear, with rage. You said— Shut up, Corbin hissed. Do not say another— You promised me, Saskia shouted. After the baby complicated things, you said we just had to get through the financing close, and then— Saskia was shouting now. And the mask she'd worn for 14 months, the professional consultant, the sympathetic friend, was gone. Replaced by someone who just realized she bet everything on the wrong partner. 2 security guards entered through the boardroom door, radios crackling at their belts. Tyler Briggs and Marcus Webb, both in their early 30s, company uniforms pressed and professional. Carmen gestured toward Corbin without looking at him. Briggs. Webb, Mr. Mercer is no longer employed here. Escort him from the premises. Badge access is revoked, effective immediately. Corbin stood slowly, like someone waking from anesthesia. Still processing that 20 minutes ago, he'd walked into this room as CFO, and now he was being removed by security. I built this company's financial infrastructure. You can't just... You stole $900,000, Howard Dixon said, his voice flat. We absolutely can. Tyler Briggs stepped forward, professional but firm. Sir, we'll need your building access badge and any company devices. Corbin's hand moved to his badge holder, then stopped. He didn't remove it, just stood there, staring at the equity calculations still displayed on the projection screen. 89% Briar, 11% investors, 0% Corbin. Saskia was standing near the window, arms crossed, staring at the same numbers. She was supposed to be CFO after they pushed Celeste out. She was supposed to control the company with Corbin after the $8 million financing closed this afternoon. The prenup clause meant she got nothing. No job, no equity, no payout. Just fraud charges. She turned to Corbin, voice quiet enough that I almost missed it. You never told me about the prenup clause. I didn't know about the... Corbin started. You didn't read it, Saskia cut him off. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp, precise, devastating. 15 months, and you never read the one document that mattered. She stared at him for another 3 seconds, and I could see the exact moment she understood what I'd understood weeks ago. She was always expendable to him, the same way he'd made me expendable. The same way he made everyone expendable when they stopped serving his purposes. Saskia picked up her purse from the chair where she'd left it 90 minutes ago, when she thought she was presenting to a board that would make her CFO. She walked to the door without looking at Corbin again. No goodbye, no final accusation, just the clean recognition that the alliance was over. Carmen spoke before Saskia reached the threshold. Ms. Langley, you'll be served with a restraining order this afternoon. Do not return to this building. Expect fraud charges within 48 hours. Saskia nodded once. Understood. Saskia... Wait. Corbin's voice cracked on her name. She didn't wait. The door closed behind her with a soft click. The board members began filing out. Howard and Derek needed to contact the Series B investors before 1 p.m., needed to disclose the fraud before the financing closed, needed to calculate damage control and revised valuations. The boardroom emptied with the shuffle of papers being gathered, laptops closing, brief murmured conversations about next steps and legal exposure. Business continuing while one man's career ended. Harriet touched my shoulder lightly. I'll wait in the hall, she said quietly, and followed Celeste and Glenn out. Carmen was the last board member to leave. She paused at the door, looked at me with something that might be respect or might be exhaustion. I'll call you at 2 to discuss investor messaging. You handled this exactly right. Thank you, Carmen, I said. Then she was gone too. And it was just me, Corbin, and the 2 security guards waiting patiently by the door. Corbin turned to face me. His shoulders were slumped. His confident posture from this morning completely collapsed. When he spoke, his voice was shaking. Briar, I know I can't fix this. But Jameson deserves a father who at least tried to explain. I said nothing. Just watched him the way I've been watching him for 10 days clinically, carefully, cataloging the performance. I never meant for it to go this far, he continued, words coming faster now. Like if he just found the right combination, he could unlock some door back to a version of our life that didn't exist anymore. The pressure of the company, the financing deadlines, she was just there. And then I couldn't stop it. But I never meant to hurt you. I never meant to hurt Jameson. The affair just happened. Work stress, she was available, all the same excuses I'd heard from 1,000 men in 1,000 stories. The script that says I'm supposed to understand, to sympathize, to accept that betrayal was inevitable under the circumstances. I reached into my jacket pocket. My fingers closed around the hospital ID bracelet I'd been carrying since I left the ER 4 days ago, white plastic. My name printed in black letters. Admission date, July 15. Discharge date, July 18. The bracelet from the concussion I got in the accident. Broken ribs, a punctured lung, days of not knowing if Corbin would even show up. I set it on the boardroom table next to the forensic audit folder. Directly in front of Corbin. The bracelet sat on the polished wood. White plastic against dark mahogany. No words. Just evidence I almost died because of you. I survived anyway. Corbin stared at it like I'd placed a weapon on the table instead of a piece of medical plastic. Briar. Please, sir, it's time to go, Tyler Briggs said, stepping forward. I turned and walked to the door where Harriet waited in the corridor. I didn't look back. Behind me, I heard Marcus Webb's quiet voice, giving Corbin instructions about badge surrender and property retrieval, the administrative details of termination and disgrace. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like finality. 5 days after the boardroom. I was sitting on the living room floor watching Jameson stack blocks, and my phone wouldn't stop ringing with lawyers, reporters, and investors who wanted explanations I didn't have energy to give. It was July 30th. The Series B financing had closed on schedule 2 days earlier. Not at the $8 million we'd projected, but at $6.8 million with a fraud disclosure attached, and 20% held in escrow for potential clawback if criminal restitution exceeded recovered assets. The deal had survived. Barely. But the damage was quantifiable in the $1.2 million gap between what the company was worth before Corbin and what it was worth after. Ivy brought me coffee and took Jameson to change his diaper, while I returned Harriet's third call of the morning. Media requests, Harriet said without preamble. Channel 3, Channel 16, Mississippi Business Journal, and something called Legal Tea Podcast. All want interviews. I'm giving them no comment pending criminal proceedings. Good, I said. What else? Corbin hired Bradley Townsend. I set my coffee down carefully. Bradley Townsend? That's an $800 per hour attorney. Where's Corbin getting that kind of money? Probably borrowing against assets he doesn't own anymore. Ivy called from the nursery, because she'd been listening to every call for 5 days, protected and furious in equal measure. Harriet continued. Townsend's office contacted me yesterday about challenging the prenup. I told them to file whatever motion they want and prepare for public humiliation. What are his grounds? They're phishing. Duress. Fraud. Procedural defect, anything that might stick. Jameson crawled back to his blocks, knocked over the tower he'd spent 10 minutes building, and laughed. Pure, uncomplicated joy that reminded me why I'd fought this hard. Why I was still fighting. Why I'd keep fighting until my son never had to doubt that I'd protected what was his. Harriet called again on August 1st with an update. Bradley Townsend had met with Corbin that morning, reviewed the 2022 prenuptial agreement for 3 billable hours. and delivered the professional equivalent of "you're screwed."
Townsend told him the agreement is airtight,
Harriet said, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. Properly notarized, filed with corporate records, updated through every funding round with independent counsel signatures on every amendment. No procedural defects, no duress argument because Corbin signed it 2 years before the alleged infidelity. No fraud because he had his own lawyer present. What did Corbin say? According to Townsend's associate, who apparently feels some obligation to professional courtesy even when representing a thief, Corbin asked him to find something else because he's not letting you take everything he built. The pronoun choice was telling. Not everything we built, everything he built. Like I was never there. Townsend explained the equity transfer already executed through the corporate bylaws. Harriet continued, "No judge will reverse a lawful prenup to undo a completed business transaction." He estimated a legal challenge would cost $150,000 minimum, with near zero success probability. Bradley's words were prison doors closing one by one. No prenup reversal, no equity recovery, no avoiding consequences. Each legal opinion, another lock clicking into place. "And if Corbin doesn't pay back the $900,000, I asked, though I already knew. "Fraud charges, possible prison time, definite bankruptcy," Harriet said. Townsend's advice was cooperate with restitution and hope for reduced charges. Trying just adds legal fees Corbin can't afford to losses he can't recover. I thanked Harriet and ended the call. The house was quiet. Ivy had taken Jameson to the park, and for the first time in 5 days, I let myself feel the exhaustion that had been building since I walked out of that boardroom. Not triumph, not relief. Just the hollow weight of surviving something that almost destroyed me. On August 8th, 2 weeks after the confrontation, I returned to the office for the first time. Employees who'd heard rumors treated me with a mixture of sympathy and respect that felt uncomfortable. Like wearing clothes that didn't quite fit. I wasn't a victim. I wasn't a hero. I was just someone who'd refused to let theft and betrayal define the ending. Celeste met me in the corner office that used to be Corbin's, now being converted to expanded finance team space. The ego-driven executive suite dismantled into something functional. She had the interim CFO title but hadn't been formally promoted yet. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "I'm here," I said. "That's something." She nodded. Understanding that here meant more than physical presence, it meant functional, managing, not broken beyond repair even if the cracks still showed. "The $900,000 recovery," Celeste said, pulling up a spreadsheet. "Forensic accountants traced it to 3 offshore accounts in the Caymans. They think we can claw back about $680,000. The rest was moved through cryptocurrencies we can't track without cooperation Corbin isn't providing. 680,000 out of 900,000. 75% recovered. Not perfect, but survivable. I pulled out the offer letter I'd drafted the night before, while Jameson slept and Ivy watched legal dramas in the next room. "I'm offering you CFO permanently," I said. 3% equity, 4-year vest. You saved this company, Celeste. Her expression shifted. Surprise, gratitude, something that looked like pain. "I should have told you sooner," she said, and her voice cracked on the words. "Maybe if I'd spoken up in June instead of July, the accident—" "You told me when you had proof," I interrupted. That's what mattered. But could she have prevented it? Could earlier disclosure have stopped the July 15th spiral, the crying, the fall, the concussion that almost killed me? I didn't know. I'd never know. And blaming Celeste for Corbin's choices was exactly wrong. "Thank you, Celeste," I said. She signed the offer letter with hands that shook slightly. And I realized everyone who'd helped me carried their own scars from this. The victory was necessary, but it wasn't clean. Let me back up to that Friday, 3 days after the boardroom confrontation. I was back at the same table for the Series B closing. Except this time, I was signing as sole controlling shareholder. July 28, 1 p.m. The investors arrived prepared for the revised valuation, $6.8 million, with fraud disclosure and escrow provisions. Because Kolb represented the investor group, and when he shook my hand, his grip was firm, respectful. The fraud reduced our valuation, Derek said. But your response to it increased our confidence. That's why we're still here. Thank you for trusting the company through this, I said. The signature pages circulated stock purchase agreement, investor rights, amended bylaws, disclosure schedules. Harriet reviewed each one beside me. Every document required only my signature now. No co-founder approval, no spousal consent, no Corbin anywhere in the authorization chain. The legal simplicity of sole control felt strange after years of shared authority. Lighter, like taking off a coat I didn't realize had been weighing me down. Howard Dixon witnessed the final signature. All complete. Congratulations. Briar 6.8 million. Series B closed. The room began to empty. Investors heading back to their firms, board members to other obligations. Marcus Feldman, the lead investor from Pinnacle Ventures, caught my eye as I was collecting my briefcase. He was in his late 50s, gray hair and expensive suit. The kind of investor who'd seen 3 recessions and knew the difference between scandal and fundamental weakness. Briar, a moment, he said quietly. We stepped to the corner of the boardroom. Off record, Marcus said, voice low. We flagged Corbin's numbers in due diligence. Too optimistic, too smooth. Revenue projections that didn't account for realistic churn. Expense forecasts that assumed perfect execution. Our investment committee questioned it. Then why invest? I asked. Because of you. Your operational track record, your client retention rates, the way employees talked about your leadership when we did reference calls. We invested despite Corbin's numbers, not because of them. I wished I'd seen it sooner. Wished I'd questioned the projections the way these strangers did. I wish I'd caught it earlier, I said. You saw it when it mattered, Marcus said. That's leadership. We're glad to be partners with you. Briar. He shook my hand and left. I stood alone at the table where 3 days earlier I'd watched Corbin's authority disintegrate. And that day, I'd signed documents giving the company its future. A month passed. Late August. August 22, which specifically, Corbin arrived at the building to collect his remaining personal items per the agreement Harriet had negotiated with his divorce attorney. Tyler Briggs, the security officer, met him in the lobby at 4:30 p.m. I was in my office when Tyler radioed ahead. Mercer's here for belongings. 15 minutes. I hadn't planned to see him, but I wouldn't hide in my own building either. Corbin's former office was Celeste's workspace now. He carried a small cardboard box framed degrees from Ole Miss, a coffee mug that said "World's Best CFO," a photo of Jameson as a newborn that I'd insisted the attorney include because our son deserved a father who remembered he existed. His hands shook slightly as he placed the photo frame in the box, careful not to crack the glass. The baby who had inadvertently accelerated their conspiracy by complicating the inheritance scheme. Now reduced to a 4x6 memento. I stepped out of my office as Corbin finished packing. Our eyes met across the hallway. Briar, he said. Can we talk just 2 minutes? I didn't answer. Just waited. Is there any chance? He shifted the box in his arms. For Jameson, I mean. Any chance we could try to work through this? For Jameson. using our son as leverage, as justification, as the shield he thought would protect him from consequences. The manipulation was transparent, almost pathetic. I looked at him for a long moment. Remembered the hospital room, July 18, the power of attorney papers. The exact tone of his voice when he said the words that ended us. "That chance ended the night you said that sentence in the hospital," I said quietly. "You know which one." He did. I could see it in his face, the flash of recognition, the memory surfacing. "You're not thinking clearly." The moment manipulation replaced partnership. The moment he chose control over trust. Corbin didn't argue. He just left. Tyler escorted him down the hallway, into the elevator, through the lobby. I walked to the fourth-floor window and watched them cross the parking lot, Corbin carrying his small box. Everything that remained, from 5 years of marriage and 7 years at the company, fitting in a container the size of a shoebox. He didn't look back at the building. His car pulled away, taillights disappearing into late afternoon traffic. That was the last time I saw him as anything other than the man who showed up for custody exchanges, who took Jameson every other weekend per the temporary order, who existed in my life only as co-parent and legal adversary. The window reflected my face against the darkening sky, older, thinner, but still here. Saturday morning in late August. And for the first time in months, I woke up without checking my phone for legal updates, investor emails, or crisis alerts. It was 7:30. Sunlight filtered through the bedroom curtains, warm and gentle instead of the harsh alarm clock glare I'd been living with since July. From down the hall, I heard Jameson babbling in his crib, happy sounds. The kind that meant he was awake but content. Playing with the fabric book clipped to the rail, Ivy was already in the kitchen when I came downstairs. She'd moved in permanently after the divorce filing, taken over the guest room to help with childcare while I rebuilt the company and my life simultaneously. The house smelled like coffee and something baking banana bread. I thought, "Coffee's ready," Ivy said without looking up from the counter. "Jameson's been awake for 20 minutes, but he's just playing with that fabric book." "You didn't have to let me sleep in," I said. "You needed it." She handed me a mug. "First time I've seen you sleep past 7 in a year." She was right. For months, I'd been jolting awake at 5 a.m. with adrenaline spiking, mentally cataloging legal deadlines and damage control strategies before my eyes fully opened. This morning, I'd woken. Naturally. Slowly. Without dread. I collected Jameson from his crib. He was 6 months old now. Heavier than I remembered from last week, changing so fast I could barely track it. He reached for me when I leaned over the rail. Tiny hands opening and closing, that universal baby gesture that means, "Pick me up, I trust you, you're safe." He didn't remember the hospital, the accident, any of it. Just knew Mama. The doorbell rang at 10 a.m. Harriet Finch arrived carrying a bakery bag and wearing jeans instead of her usual attorney armor of blazer and briefcase. First social visit, not legal consultation. "Bagels," she announced, setting the bag on the kitchen island. "And actually good cream cheese, not the grocery store kind." Ivy poured her coffee without asking how she took it. They'd become friends through proximity and shared purpose. Two women who'd helped me survive. "Plea deals signed yesterday," Harriet said as we settled around the dining table. Her voice was casual, but I heard the significance. Corbin and Saskia both accepted. 5 years probation each. Full restitution of the $680 we recovered. No prison time. It's done. Done. The word should have felt bigger, more final. Part of me thought I'd feel more something, I said. Relief? Vindication? "You feel tired because you've been fighting for 6 weeks straight," Harriet said. "That's normal. Your nervous system doesn't switch off the second the threat ends. Give it time." Ivy got up to refill her mug, paused by the bookshelf in the living room. "Briar, are you sure you want to keep this here?" She was pointing at the small shadow box frame I'd mounted the week before, the hospital ID bracelet preserved inside, against black velvet backing. White plastic with my name printed in block letters. Admission date July 15, visible through the glass. The hospital bracelet in the shadow box caught morning light through the window, glinting like some kind of artifact in a museum. Evidence of survival. "Are you sure you want this where Jameson can see it when he's older?" Ivy asked. "Yes," I said. "Someday I'll tell him the full story, including the parts that hurt." Harriet set down her coffee. Survival is worth remembering. The conversation drifted to easier topics. The company had hired 2 new developers the week before, both women recommended by Celeste. We'd landed an enterprise client worth $400,000 annually. The kind of stable contract that changes revenue projections from hopeful to certain. The board had approved Celeste's expansion plan, and Howard Dixon had asked if I'd speak on a corporate governance panel about handling executive fraud. "You'd be sharing how you caught the fraud," Harriet said. "I didn't catch it," I corrected her. "Celeste did. I just acted on it." "You built a company culture where she felt safe telling you," Ivy said from the kitchen. "That's leadership." Maybe. Or maybe it was just survival instinct. Surround yourself with people who tell the truth, even when it's ugly, even when it costs them. Harriet left around noon, hugged me at the door instead of shaking hands. The attorney who'd become a friend through shared battle, who'd seen me at my most vulnerable and never looked away. I sat on the front porch watching Ivy play with Jameson in the yard. She was teaching him to catch, tossing a soft fabric ball toward his chubby hands, praising him when he grabbed it, even accidentally. The simple repetition of trust, throw, catch, building foundation one toss at a time. I thought about the prenup. The document signed May 18, 2022, during the Series A funding chaos when I was focused on investor terms and cap tables and barely paid attention to the marital agreement updates our attorneys recommended. Corbin had signed it without reading because he had a golf meeting. I'd signed it because it seemed prudent. 2 years before I needed it. Filed with corporate records, notarized, forgotten. That document, not love, not loyalty, not the faith I'd placed in a marriage that turned out to be performance, protected my family when everything else failed. The prenup clause that Corbin never bothered to read became the mechanism that transferred his equity, secured Jameson's inheritance, saved the company I built. Ivy tossed the ball again. Jameson laughed in the sunlight, pure and uncomplicated. Sometimes what protects a family isn't love. It's a document signed at exactly the right moment, long before anyone needed it. I walked down the porch steps to join them in the grass. Jameson crawled toward me, grinning. Safe. The story that started in a hospital bed ended here, in my own backyard, with my son protected and my future mine alone. Don't make my mistake of trusting without verifying. For years, I signed whatever my husband put in front of me because I believed marriage meant blind faith. I ignored the inconsistencies, vendor payments that didn't add up, late nights that became routine, the distance after our son was born. I told myself I was being supportive. I was actually being willfully blind. The lesson I learned wasn't about revenge stories where the wronged wife destroys her husband's life. This revenge story taught me something deeper. Protect yourself legally before you need protection emotionally. That prenup I signed in 2022 without drama became the weapon that saved my son's inheritance and my company's future. I believe God's timing was perfect if I'd discovered the theft 6 months earlier. Before the prenup update during our Series A funding, I would have had no legal recourse. The document I barely noticed became divine protection I desperately needed. If this revenge story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had a document save you when trust failed? Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more stories about quiet people who finally close the account, subscribe to this channel. Your story might be next. Thank you for staying until the very end. As a reminder, certain details in this story have been fictionalized for storytelling purposes. But the core lesson remains true. Legal protection matters. God bless you.